What is the biggest tantrum you have seen someone throw? I was in a fairly empty office supply store, and this lady started freaking out about someone stealing her purse from her cart, like berating employees and calling them all thieves. Just completely hysterical. Cursing, screaming, you name it. Employee walks up and points to her purse in the cart with tons of merchandise piled on top of it. She was just throwing all of the things she was going to buy on top of her purse, and she couldn't see it anymore. Then she just starts going nuts on the employee that found her purse. Finally, a manager comes up and tells her to get the hell out of my store. I put up a short synopsis, but seriously, it all probably lasted a solid 3 to 4 minutes. In real time, for a grown woman to be yelling and freaking out, this is a long time. I was pretty stunned.
I was in a quiet place once when a guy started screaming about his lost phone. He really lost it, yelling at everyone around him. People were trying to help him, but he didn't notice. Then someone pointed out his phone was in his hand the whole time. Instead of calming down, he turned on the person who found it for him. It was awkward to watch. Some things just blow up for no reason.
My mom's boyfriend at the time, now husband, smashed my little brother's windshield in one time. Why? Well, my dad came over to pick up my brothers for the weekend, and my mom's boyfriend doesn't like my dad. They knew he was coming over to get my brothers. My dad didn't get out of the car, come over to the door, or anything. My mom's boyfriend didn't even have to look at the guy, and somehow the idea of him being nearby made him angry enough to destroy my brother's property. Dude has issues.
That's a wild situation. It doesn't make much sense to take out anger like that on an innocent thing. Seems like the boyfriend has some major unresolved feelings. Acting out like that just ends up causing more problems. Your little brother probably just wanted to enjoy his weekend too. Family dynamics can be complicated.
At my old job, my boss wanted me to find an adapter to plug 2 cables together. Well, we had just reorganized the storage room, so finding it should be easy. After an hour of searching and not finding it, my boss freaks out. He takes all the boxes that were organized by cable and all the boxes organized by adapters. Let's face it, he took every organized box in the closet and dumped them out on the floor and said I'd have an easier time finding it. Didn't find it because we didn't have it.
That sounds familiar. Once at my old workplace, we had to find a missing part for a project. I spent ages looking through drawers while my colleague just tossed everything around. In the end, we realized it never arrived. That chaos didn't help at all. Just a waste of time, really. Sometimes you just don't have what you need on hand.
Okay, this story actually ends with a nice sense of justice served. So I used to work at Whole Foods. This guy at the register starts screaming at the cashier. Really friendly older lady, by the way. To be honest, I'm still not sure what it was he was so upset about, but clearly it was something stupid and petty. The manager comes up and tries to calm him down to no avail. This guy was hysterical. The manager eventually shoos him out of the store, telling him whatever he wants to hear just to get him out. He's in the parking lot, still screaming at the store, even after the manager went back inside. The guy gets in his truck, driving like a maniac because he's still fuming, and proceeds to scrape the entire side of his truck on the parked forklift as he around a corner in the lot. He gets out and starts telling at the manager again for being so stupid as to have parked the forklift where he wanted to drive. The guy was threatening lawsuits and whatnot, and eventually left. As far as I know, no legal action was ever taken. The guy just fucked his truck up.
It's just wild how some people can lose their cool over nothing. This dude made such a scene over a small issue, and it escalated quickly. Then, to top it off, he wrecks his own truck trying to blame the store. You can't really feel bad for someone like that. Sometimes, life has a funny way of balancing things out, like giving him that little slice of justice. Just ironic how it turned out.
I had a business partner who had this wife that would make him carry her. Yes, carry her at the weirdest times. I actually saw her once come into the office, stomp her foot, and threw herself on floor crying because he told her she couldn't buy something and he had to carry her out. He finally woke up and was leaving in her. She came into the office and started throwing eggs at everyone. Then she rammed her car repeatedly into his. I was freaked and secretly laughing inside. Later on in the year, I heard she changed her last name to Monroe, like Marilyn Monroe.
That's a pretty wild story. It's crazy how some people can act when they don't get their way. Carrying someone like that, especially in public, is just something else. The egg throwing and car incident is next level. It's like a scene from a movie. And changing her last name to Monroe? Guess she wanted to be the star of her own drama. Just shows how unpredictable relationships can be.
One summer many years ago, my sister and I were back at home from college. My mom had dinner on the stove when my sister came downstairs. "Sister, I want McDonald's for dinner. Can you go get some?" "Mom, no, I'm already making dinner." "Sister, but I don't want what you're making. I want McDonald's." "Mom, no, I'm not going to McDonald's." At this point, my sister literally collapses to the ground in a heap and begins hysterical sobbing and yelling at the top of her lungs. Through her hysterics, she continued her screaming demands for McDonald's. The whole situation was so absurd that my mom and I just sat there laughing at her, which of course only made my sister begin to sob even more. She eventually got up off the ground and went upstairs without eating dinner that night out of protest.
That sounds like a typical sibling moment. I remember a time when my friend threw a fit over a pizza. He wanted extra toppings, but the place said no. He just sat there, pouting, while the rest of us enjoyed our slices. Honestly, it was hard not to laugh, especially when he started trying to negotiate. In the end, he missed out, but that just fueled the jokes for weeks after.
I have to admit, I have thrown one tantrum. The night before a 12-page essay was due, it disappeared from my laptop. I technically finished the essay a week before, but I waited to turn it in until the day before so I could reread it with fresh eyes. Well, I go to reread it and turn it in online, and the second half was gone. I lost it. I started screaming and throwing stuff in my room. My parents ended up checking on me and asking what happened. I was sobbing when I told them. My bro checked out my computer, since he works in IT, and he couldn't find the other half of my paper. I decided to turn the paper in late and accept half the letter grade off. I ended up with an A-. I'm still pretty proud of that paper. Oh, by the way, I'm a preschool teacher now. I've learned to control my emotions better.
I can relate to that. I once lost an important project on my laptop the night before it was due. I thought I had everything saved, but it was just gone. I got frustrated, pacing around my room. My friends tried to help, but nothing worked. In the end, I managed to redo it last minute and handed it in late. Somehow, I still got a decent grade. It's funny how things turn out.
The adults who have tantrums ought to be given a large dose of reality. They were never told this was the wrong way to act when they were little, so they kept doing it, using tears and screaming to manipulate others for the rest of their lives, because very few will stand up to them. Have you seen a 14-year-old fake cry and scream and pound his fist against the floor because he didn't have enough money for a cookie? In front of the whole school cafeteria, this kid makes an ass of himself. He gets away with it at home, so he thinks people in the real world will bend to his will this way. It is disturbing.
It's interesting how some people just don't grow out of their childish ways. I remember a friend who would throw fits whenever things didn't go his way. He'd act like a kid, even in public. It was awkward to watch. I think he honestly thought it would work like it did at home. Seeing that kind of behavior in adults is just sad. It's like they never learned how to deal with life properly.
I was at the DMV and this lady in front of me, probably early or mid-30s, was there with her father. She was having a meltdown screaming at him and crying because he refused to pay for any more of her parking tickets. I obviously don't know all of the details, but it sounded like she had received several of them recently.
It's wild how a simple trip to the DMV can turn into a scene. I mean, you see people stressed out there, but this was different. Watching someone lose it over parking tickets was something else. It makes you think about the pressure some folks might be under. Can't imagine how awkward it was for her dad, just standing there while she vented in public. Just not a great spot to be in, really.
I work in retail, so I've seen a lot. But we had a woman in her 50s come in with a pair of PJs she wanted to return, no tags on them. PJs are considered intimate apparel, so no tags equals no return. She shrieked, banged her fist on the counter, asked what we had against old people, was told off by other customers in the store, and then said she was going to get mall security to make us give her the refund. Well, we had already called them. She then started screaming at them, and they escorted her and her used PJs out of the store. Apparently, she had done it so far in a few stores in her mall that day.
I get it, retail can be wild. I had a similar experience with a customer who thought they could return anything. This one guy came in with a half-eaten sandwich, claiming it was expired. He wouldn't take no for an answer, getting louder and more ridiculous. In the end, security had to step in. It's surprising how some people don't realize there are rules. Makes for a memorable workday, though.
On Thanksgiving, my grandma's husband, my step-grandpa, I guess, threw a fit when my stepmom refused to serve snacks before the rest of the guests arrived, so that all the kids wouldn't fill up before the big meal. He refused to eat any of the food, drink any wine, or talk to her all night. This was after making a few rude remarks towards her. The worst part is that her and my dad have been providing a lot of financial support to him and Grandma recently, and he still had the nerve to throw a fit. My grandma was embarrassed to say the least.
That sounds pretty rough. It's interesting how family dynamics can get really tense over something like snacks. You'd think common sense would kick in, especially when someone is helping you out. It's just unfortunate for everyone involved. Your grandma must have felt stuck in the middle. It's a tough situation when people can't communicate well. Definitely not the kind of Thanksgiving vibe anyone wants.
My own. It is embarrassing. It happened at work. I've always been a little on the immature side when it comes to dealing with stress and anger. I had a boss who I mostly corresponded with via phone and email since we worked in different offices. He knew all the ways to push my buttons, and he would yell at me over the phone. After one particular conversation, I flipped. I threw my phone at the office door. It shattered. I was swearing. I swatted at some soda cans that were on my desk. And one of the cans with pop still in it hit a coworker of mine. He was splashed, and he was mad. I apologized and left the room. I went to my car and headed over to Mark's work warehouse and bought a $50 gift card. Came back and gave it to my coworker to go and buy a new shirt. To this day, I still cringe about how I looked and acted. It was about 6 years ago now. I am 29 now, so I was 23 at the time. I do still lash out sometimes, but very subtly and nothing like that. My God, I should have been fired. No one said anything to my boss about it, though.
That sounds pretty rough. We've all had those moments where stress gets the best of us. I had a similar experience once, where I lost my cool over a mistake at work. I ended up just walking out to cool off. Later, I realized I was acting like a kid. It's good you made amends with your coworker. Those situations can really make you rethink how you handle things. Life's about learning, I guess.
My roommate threw a little tantrum when I asked him to clean his cat's urine from our kitchen counter. His response, and I quote, "Where do you get off telling me what to do?" The man is in his 30s, and I'd expect that line from someone half his age. I'd sooner take his cats to the pound than clean up after them. He's home maybe 1 day per week, but his cats are here 24/7.
It's pretty wild when adults act like kids. You'd think the responsibility would come with age. I guess he didn't learn that lesson yet. Those cats must be a handful, especially when he's hardly around. I'd be frustrated too if I had to deal with that. It feels like a lot of people don't realize how their pets impact shared spaces.
I work at a fast food restaurant, and it was a hot summer day, but unfortunately our ice cream machine was broken, so I had to tell people that I couldn't give them ice cream due to the machine being broke. Most people responded with an okay and walking out sad, but this one lady comes and asks for ice cream. But I informed her that I was broken and apologized. That wasn't good enough for her. She points to the soda fountain and says, "No, it's not. I just saw someone get some over there." So I tried explaining to this woman without laughing my ass off that wasn't the ice cream machine, and I showed her where it was, behind her front counter. So she makes a break for it and pulls the lever on it, and ice cream explodes all over her. She gets pissed about that and demands we buy her new clothes, give her free food, etc. And when I tell her no, she stomps out of the place, screaming her head off.
I was working one day when the ice cream machine went down. Most customers accepted it, but one lady really lost it. She thought she could get ice cream from the soda fountain and tried to prove me wrong. When she pulled the lever, ice cream shot everywhere. She got furious and wanted us to pay for her clothes and meals. Eventually, she just stormed out yelling. Just another day at work, I guess.
I didn't witness this myself. Wish I did, but my aunt shared this story with me. So a couple years ago, my cousin was scheduled to have some plastic surgery done on her nose. Apparently the surgeon could not perform the surgery on her because she was sick from some fever or cold. Not sure. Anyways, upon hearing that the procedure would have to be delayed, my cousin freaked out by crying, swearing, and yelling at the staff, saying that they wasted her time. My aunt said she went on with her tantrum for a good 10 minutes, being sure to tell the staff how stupid they were.
Sounds like quite the scene. People can react really strongly when things don't go as planned. I've seen similar meltdowns before, where emotions just take over. It's wild how the stress of situations can bring out the worst in some folks. Your cousin definitely made her feelings known, if nothing else. Just shows how frustrating it can be when you feel like you're not in control.
Whole office went out for a party during work hours, bowling with drinks and apps and a party bus. Came back to the office, and our office manager/receptionist started shrieking and screaming at everyone that someone stole her wallet. We were all stunned and confused. She was in charge of the party, so chances are she just drunkenly forgot it at the place when she was paying the tab. She stormed out and never came back. Turned out she was stealing from the company and had gone home and racked up $10K in personal charges on her company card before anyone knew she wasn't coming back. Plus, she was stealing packages when they'd come in. She signed for them with bogus names, but then said she never saw it, etc.
That's a wild story. It's always a surprise when someone turns out to be not what they seem. You think it's just a casual outing and all of a sudden, there's drama. She probably thought she could get away with it, but in a small office, people notice things. It's a shame it ended that way, but it shows you can't trust everyone. Definitely a memorable day for the team.
When I was young, maybe 7 or so, my mother had an argument with my father about money. She then proceeded to take all of her credit cards out of her wallet and cut them up into small pieces, leaving the pile on the kitchen table. She then yelled for me and my younger brother and sister to come into the room, where she lined us up, showed us the cut of credit cards, and told us she was never going to buy us anything ever again, and that if we ever needed anything, we'd have to ask our dad for it. When I was still upset a few hours later, she told me that I shouldn't worry because she could get her credit cards replaced, as if that was the real issue for me at 7 years old.
That sounds like a tough moment. I remember a situation when my friend's parents argued about something similar. They had this intense fight, and he was left feeling pretty lost. It was awkward when his mom said something similar about not buying him things. Kids take those things seriously, thinking it's the end of the world. It's strange how adults can get wrapped up in their problems, forgetting how it affects their kids.
My coworker and I follow a guy in a KFC for lunch a few years ago. To set the stage, this KFC is empty and the drive-thru is also empty. No reason to be out of chicken. He orders some chicken meal, and the lady at the counter replies that it will be about a 20 minutes wait, and they're currently out of that kind of chicken. The guy said okay, and orders a different meal, and she asked original or crispy. He said original, and she replied they are out, and it would be 20 minutes for that also. At this point, he's obviously upset, but said fine, crispy then. To which the lady at counter said they were also out of crispy, and it would be 20 minutes. And that just set this guy off in a hilarious fashion. Why did you even ask me? This is a KFC, Kentucky Fried Chicken. How can you not have any chicken? What do you sell, Brett? And so on for about 5 minutes. We had to leave, you were laughing so hard. Normally I would feel bad for the worker, but really it is a KFC. How did you run out of all the chicken at once for an empty restaurant and not start any until the next customer came?
That sounds pretty wild. You'd think a KFC would have chicken on hand, considering that's their whole thing. I mean, running out of chicken in an empty restaurant is something else. The guy's reaction makes sense, though. It's funny how these situations can spiral out, and you can't help but laugh. You just hope the worker doesn't get too stressed. But yeah, just a strange day for fast food.
Oh man, I was in the train station, waiting at a Dunkin' Donuts to get coffee, and this grown-ass man gets a bagel, looks at the bagel, throws the bagel at the Dunkin' employee, and literally starts screaming like a baby, "I didn't want my bagel toasted. I said untoasted. How many times do I have to say that?" Etc., etc., on and on, screaming at them about this fucking $2 bagel. The dude's wife was behind him, looking so embarrassed. BC, like if they didn't get you wanted it untoasted the first 2 or 3 times, it's time to give up and move on.
That's wild. I can't believe someone would lose it over a bagel. I mean, it's just a snack, right? I remember a time when my friend flipped out over a wrong order at a fast food place. He went off for no reason. Everyone was just awkwardly watching. It's funny how some people can't handle small mistakes and go way overboard. At the end of the day, it's just food.
I saw this couple at an Apple store that came in 25 minutes past their Genius Bar appointment time. The lady threw a fit and demanded that they be seen right away because they had driven over an hour to get there. She yelled at the person checking them in, called him an asshole, and just made a total scene. A manager came over to try to pacify them and told them something like, "I'll take a look at the phone now, but if there's a real issue, I will have to make you another appointment." So they describe how their iPhone 6 sounded garbled and low, and that everyone told them they sounded like they were in a tunnel. The manager asks, "Does this happen all the time?" And they say something like, "Yes. And it's brand new. I haven't even taken the tape off of it yet." He pulls the packing tape off, makes a call, and hands it to the woman. Asks her, "Does this sound better?" The lady picks the phone back up and immediately turns bright red. The packing tape wraps around the phone, covering the speaker and microphone. I've never seen someone turn so red so fast.
That's kind of funny. People can really lose their cool over things that seem minor. I remember a friend of mine had a similar situation where they thought their phone was defective. They went to the store, all worked up, only to find they hadn't charged it properly. The look on their face was priceless. Sometimes, it's just a simple oversight that makes us seem a little ridiculous. It's good to laugh about it later.
A girl I worked with threw a tantrum in the parking lot because she got passed up for a promotion. Now, keep in mind that the promotion didn't come with a raise. It just meant that this other girl could tell her what to do. I saw her run out to the parking lot, lay on the ground, and start kicking her legs and pounding her fists on the ground, screaming into the sky. I just stood there and stared, wondering if this was actually happening. She was 27 at the time. Pretty wild.
That sounds like a memorable moment. It's odd how people can react so intensely to things that seem trivial. I once saw a guy get really upset over a game of mini-golf. He threw his putter and sat down in frustration. It's just strange how stress can make people go from calm to full meltdown. Makes you think about how we all handle disappointment.
It's Thanksgiving, and one of my cousin's family is hosting my family and my other cousin's family, B, who lives in Canada, at their house. Thanksgiving came around, and it was supposed to rain, so family decided that everyone should just go to Fridays instead of coming to their house. After hearing this, my dad, who thought it was stupid that family B was coming all the way from Canada just to go to Fridays, decided to invite both families over to our house. We had just moved back after live abroad for a couple years, so our house was half furnished. Long story short, we hosted the party, and the aunt from family, it was in a bad mood the whole night. Even in the picture of the whole family where everyone is smiling, she is standing off at the end of the crowd, not even trying to smile. After that, our family wasn't invited to do things with family A for 2 years. It's been a couple more years now, and we just go out to dinner sometimes, but we still aren't invited over for Thanksgiving.
That Thanksgiving was a bit awkward. Family A was supposed to host, but they switched plans last minute, which didn't sit well with my dad. So, we ended up hosting instead. The whole vibe fell off, especially with Aunt from family A looking grumpy in all the photos. It's funny how that one day led to 2 years of not being invited to family events. Now we just meet for dinners, but no Thanksgiving invites.
Grown adult? Geez, my now 17-year-old brother having to wake up in the mornings and punching walls which makes holes in them is one thing, but let's see. My friend's parents seemed fine most of the time, but the mom could get a little angry. I think she exploded at this point. At the time, I was 7 years old and my friend and I were playing with cars in his room, and his mom came in screaming and hitting us with pillows. The pillows I didn't give two shits about. I thought she'd say something like April Fools, but then she went downstairs and pried the TV off the wall and threw it out into the backyard. Because my friend had left a juice box out on the kitchen table.
Sounds like your friend's mom had a pretty intense moment there. Throwing a TV over a juice box is next level. I mean, we all have our breaking points, I guess. Kids just playing in the room, then boom, chaos. Can't imagine how your friend felt seeing that. It's wild how little things can spark big reactions. Definite story to remember for sure.
My father taught me to play chess when I was 5. My mother had a master's degree in art and always considered herself cleverer than everyone else. When I was 12, I checkmated her and laughed. She screamed at me, picked up a piece and threw it, hitting me in the head. She has never played me since. 42 years now.
That's an interesting family dynamic. Chess can be competitive, and it sounds like that moment really changed things. Sometimes parents take losses hard, especially in games they consider their strong suit. It's funny how a game can create such lasting impressions. You would think she'd want a rematch after all these years, though. Guess it's just one of those stories that stick with you.
When we were dating, I took my future wife to a chic little French restaurant in Lake Worth, Florida, figuring I could score a few points. Dinner was great until an old man at a table of 6 septuagenarians next to us jumped up and grabbed one of the waiters by the collar, put his face in the guy's grill, and yelled, "I don't like your attitude." Turned out a different waiter had upset him earlier, and he had the wrong guy. He realized that, muttered something and sat down, whereupon his wife pulled back and punched him in the face hard. He got up and stormed out, and everybody else wrapped things up and left as quickly as possible. We tried not to laugh, but it wasn't easy. Good times.
That sounds like quite the evening. It's interesting how a nice dinner can shift so quickly. It was probably hard to keep a straight face during all that chaos. Moments like that make for good stories later on, even if they are a bit unexpected. It's always the surprising things that stick with you. Glad you found some humor in it despite the craziness.
My 26 years old sister recently had a tantrum recuse our mother wouldn't buy her the iPhone 6 Plus. My mother was fine with buying her the 6 because she could pick it up for $150, while the 6 Plus was like $500 plus a contract. She called my mother literally crying, just making ugly noises and screams. Sounded like she was 8 again.
It's kind of wild how some things don't change. My friend had a similar meltdown over a video game console once. He was older but acted younger when he didn't get it. We laughed it off later, but in that moment, it was all drama. Sometimes you just forget how to handle disappointment, I guess. It's a bit funny how we just revert to that childish side when we want something.
This reminds me of an ex-boyfriend. He was pretty high-strung. Every time we planned something, he would have some arbitrary timeline in his head, one that he didn't actually share with me. If he didn't feel like I was keeping up with this timeline, he would flip out. Anyway, we were at a hotel and about to head out for the day. I was rummaging through my purse, making sure I had some particular object in there before we left. He's standing in the doorway, silently waiting on me, when he suddenly, wordlessly, comes over to the bed and completely flips my purse upside down, spilling its entire contents. I didn't know what to say. He then had to wait for me to put everything back in.
Sounds like you had quite the experience. That kind of behavior is just frustrating. It's weird how some people have these unspoken expectations and then act out when you don't meet them. Flipping your purse like that? That's just unnecessary. It's like he didn't even consider how that would make you feel. Definitely not a good way to handle things. You probably just wanted to enjoy your day, not deal with that stress.
Since we're talking about grown-ass sisters being babies, my sister and I got home from grocery shopping. I put away all the food, as always, and she asked me to feed her cat because she really has to pee. I always feed her cat, but my mistake was simply asking, "Can't you feed your cat after you pee?" I feed him every night, and I'm putting away the groceries. She throws a tantrum and stomps away, and I feed her cat because he shouldn't have to suffer due to her meltdown. 10 minutes later, she passes me and says, "Night." I say, "I fed your cat. You're welcome." She goes, "Well, I cleaned his cat box, so you're welcome." Like, hoo-hoo, cleaning up after your own animal. Thank you, Your Grace.
Sounds like a typical sibling moment. You're doing the routine stuff while she just wants to dodge her responsibilities. It's interesting how small things can trigger big reactions. You end up having to deal with her drama just so the cat is taken care of. At the end of the day, though, it's just another day in the life of family dynamics. You can't help but shake your head sometimes.
Ugh, I can sympathize. At Thanksgiving a couple of years ago, my then 32-year-old sister disagreed with something I said about how wild animals should never be kept as pets. So, she started an argument with me about it, with me trying to calmly explain my point and her getting louder and yelling about it. So my mom came in and tried to diffuse the situation. So my sister got up on my mom's face and started screaming at her about how I was yelling too, and she shouldn't be the only one getting screamed at. So my mom's live-in boyfriend told her that if she was going to scream in my mom's face, she could leave. So of course my sister started yelling about how she was being kicked out of her mother's own house, and how everyone thinks she's such a fuck up, which she is, and how me and my brother never get yelled at for anything, because everyone thinks we're perfect angels. They don't, and we ruined her Thanksgiving. I was glad she didn't come this year.
Sounds like a rough Thanksgiving. Family arguments can really take the fun out of things. It's tough when one person just won't back down and it escalates. Your mom stepping in was probably necessary, but it just made things more tense. Hopefully, this year was more chill without that drama. Everyone could probably use a peaceful dinner, especially after that chaos.
Please consider subscribing if you enjoyed. Love.